Hello and welcome to day 5 of Lunchtime Crochet. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be crocheting the foundation chain of our warm heart blankets. So what you will need, and if you're in the watching via Facebook, pop any questions you've got in the comments and say hello. And if you're joining us via Zoom, say hi in the chat and pop your questions in there too as we go through. So what you'll need is a ball of your Homely Bliss yarn that you've wound into a ball. You'll also need 2 stitch markers. We use them to get nice even edges, and you'll need a 25mm crochet hook. Okay, so let's dive in and start. So here we go. We've got the end of our yarn, and the first thing we need to do our foundation chain is to do a slip knot. Now, if you've got a favorite way of doing a slip knot, do it that way. Otherwise, this is the way that I do it. There's no right or wrong way to do a slip knot. The important thing is you get the slip knot. So I'll call this the cut end and I'll call this the ball end. It's the end that's attached to the ball. And just get your bit of yarn and put that over your palm. And make sure you've got a nice length of yarn down here, so about 20 centimeters. Doesn't have to be exact, but just a nice length. That's so we can weave it in later. And with your ball end, the end that's attached to the ball, wrap that around the back of your hand and then over the palm of your hand, putting it on the fingertip side of the first bit of yarn that you put on your hand. And then turn your hand over like this. And with the ball end, we're going to make a loop under the bit of yarn that's already on your hand. Now, the direction you do this loop is really important. Otherwise, your slip knot is just going to fall apart. So with this ball end, make a loop under the bit of yarn that's already around your hand. And you need to have the loop going from your knuckles, pointing out towards your fingertips. So knuckles to fingertips. So it looks like that. And then when you've got that, put your crochet hook into the loop, slide your hand out. You can see there's the loop here, and we've got the loop on the hook. And if you're making the hearts with us the other day, at this stage, we stopped with the slip knot, with doing the adjustable slip knot or the adjustable loop or the magic loop or the magic circle. There's so many names for it. We stopped here. But to make the slip knot, we're just going to pull the cut end to turn that into a knot. And then just tighten that up so it's sitting on your crochet hook. Don't have it right up close to your crochet hook. Like don't have the knot touching your crochet hook. Have it so you can fit roughly a finger in between. And that's really important, keeping this loop so there's a little bit of a space underneath the hook. And will help with your tension while you're crocheting so your stitches aren't too tight. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that slip knot once more, just in case. And if you'd like me to show you anything again, just let me know in the comments or in the chat. Okay, so doing the slip knot, put the yarn on the palm of your hand, and this is the cut end, and this is the ball end. And leave roughly 20 centimeters out here. And then wrap the yarn around your hand. So going around the back of your hand first and then over your palm, and have this second bit of yarn that you've just wrapped around on the fingertip side of the first bit of yarn. And then turn your hand over. And with the ball end, make a loop under the piece of yarn that's already around your hand. And the loop needs to go from your knuckles, pointing out towards your fingertips. So knuckles to fingertips. So that's really important. Otherwise, your slip knot just falls apart. And then put your hook into this loop that we just made. Slide your hand out. And with this cut end, pull that to tighten your knot. And then just to check that you've done it right, is this ball end. Pulling that should make the loop smaller and then make it bigger going the opposite way. So, and just tighten that loop up and have it so it's about a thing. You can roughly fit a fingertip in between the hook and the knot. So you've got a nice little gap under that. Your hook can move very freely up and down your hook. Very important. Okay, there we go. So now we're going to do our first chain stitch. Like I said before, that we'll be doing 30 chain stitches, and this is number 1. And I will show it. I will show you how to do it twice. So don't worry if you miss it the first time. So the first thing we do is a thing called a yarn over, and there is so many yarn overs in crocheting. so many. And when we do a yarn over, we wrap the yarn around the hook, and we always go behind the hook and then over the front of the hook. So wrap the yarn around the hook, go behind, and then over the front is the second part of a yarn over. And then the next part of the foundation chain, so we start with the yarn over, is we're going to pull the yarn over through this loop that's already on the hook. And what that means is that this loop is going to go down and over the end of the hook like that. And the yarn over becomes the new loop that's on the hook. And like I said before, when we had just done the slip knot, make sure you've got a nice gap under there. You don't want this too tight because then it makes your crocheting hard to crochet into. You want to have a nice gap there. So think nice, loose thoughts, nice and calm, and just keep this loop nice there. And then, and I'll show you this twice as well. I will show you this again. So this is our first crochet stitch that we've done. So our first chain stitch. And when we count our stitches, we count these V's. So there's one leg of the V there and one leg there. And each crochet stitch has a V that we can count. And then, so there on the outside, the 2 legs of the V. And then if you kind of look inside, you can see another bit of yarn there. And if you turn that over, I call that the knobbly bit. That's at the back. And that is where we're going to put the stitch marker. So get one of your stitch markers and put it around that like that. So your stitch markers are the kind of things that look a little bit like a safety pin, but different. And that's going to tell us where the edge of the last stitch of our foundation chain is. So maybe your chain, your first chain didn't look anything like mine at all. But if you can look, you can see the 2 legs of the V are always on the outside of your stitch. And if you pull them together and make a V, so there we go, there's the V of our chain stitch. And then on behind that, and kind of behind and in the middle, is the knobbly bit. So that's where the stitch marker goes. I'm going to show you that again. Okay, so hook, loop goes onto the hook, and make sure you've got a nice generous gap in there. And then to do the first part of doing a chain stitch is to do the yarn over. So wrap the yarn around the hook, going behind and then over the front of the hook. And then we're going to pull the yarn over through this loop, which means that this loop goes down and over the end of the hook. Oops, my yarn over jumped out, down and over the end of the hook like that. And the yarn over becomes our next loop. And then have a look at your chain stitch. Find the 2 outside edges of your V. So they come up out of the slip knot like that. So that's the V, the 2 legs of the V of our chain stitch. And then if you turn that around, here is the knobbly bit. Turn that right upside down. Here's the knobbly bit here sticking up. You can see it sits behind, between the 2 legs of the V, but behind, and it sticks up like that. And get your stitch marker and put that through there. And then let me know how you're going with that, and let me know in the comments or in the chat. And if your chain is looking a bit pretzely, once we do a couple of these, about 5 of them, I'm going to show you a little hint, a little tip to make them look more like these. we need a couple need a few there to be able to do it. And just remember with the loop on your hook, make sure you've got a nice gap in there. Don't pull that loop too tight. Leave a nice gap in here. And also make sure you push it back up onto the thickest part of your hook. If you leave it down here, your loop will be smaller. So we want to push it up here onto the thickest part of the hook. I'll just wait a second just so you can let me know in the comments and in the chat how you've gone with that. Let me know if you've got your first chain stitch done or not, and let me know if you'd like some help, if you'd like to see anything again. I'll just wait a second for you to do that. I'm just going to do the chain stitch once again, right from the start. So actually, I'll go right back to the very, very start. So hopefully, Slavika, you can follow along. If you are able to type in the chat or into the comments with what you're having trouble with, since we can't seem to get you unmuted or your video on, that's okay. If you can kind of describe what you're having a problem with or at what point you're having the problem, maybe I can help you. Okay, so back to the very start. So I'm going to call this the cut end, sorry, and this is the ball end. Now put the yarn over the palm of your hand and leave roughly 20 centimeters out here. So even just slightly shorter than the length of your crochet hook. And then I've said this is the cut end and this is the ball end. With the ball end, wrap that around the back of your hand and then over the front of your hand. And so the bit that's just gone over your palm, so it's on the fingertip side of the first one. And then turn your hand over like that. And then with this, the ball end, the end that's attached to the ball, we're going to make a loop under the piece of yarn that's already around your hand. And when you do that, go from the side, that's your wrist side of the bit of yarn that's already around your hand, and then go out towards your fingertips. So the loop that you've just made goes under the piece of yarn that's already around your hand, and it's going from your wrist out towards your fingertips like that. And then put your hook into the loop like that. And then pull your hand out and you've got a big circle here and then a loop on the hook, and then pull the cut end, and that will make that big loop into a knot that's on the yarn. And then just to check that your slip knot is right, otherwise you run out of yarn really quickly. Make sure that when you pull the ball end, it makes that loop get smaller. And then if you pull the loop, it's the ball end that's moving. Like that. And then have this loop so it can move nice and freely on your crochet hook and that your finger can fit in there. Okay, so next step is we'll do the yarn over. So when you're doing a yarn over, we go put the yarn, so doing the ball end, wrap the yarn behind the crochet hook and then over the front of the crochet hook, and it kind of hangs out in the hook part of your crochet hook. So that the yarn goes behind and then around the front. And then we're going to pull this yarn over through the loop that's on the hook. And what that means is this loop goes down and over the end of the hook like that. And the yarn over becomes the next loop that's on the hook. And this is your first chain. And so each crochet stitch has a V. So here's the two legs of the V. There's the first one and there's the second one. And then behind that is a knobbly bit. And so put your stitch marker around the knobbly bit. And if you're having troubles finding the knobbly bit, just put it anywhere. Anywhere, any bit of yarn that comes out of the knot of the slip knot. It will get easier to identify where the knobbly bit, the more you crochet is. And probably the thing I should have said right at the start is that crocheting, the hardest bit always is, and this is whether you've been crocheting this is your first project or you've been crocheting for many, many years. The hardest part is always starting and getting that foundation chain done, and then the first couple of rows, and then it gets easier. So obviously, if this is like one of your first crochet projects, it's going to be tougher, but just stick with it. And even if your chain stitches look nothing like mine, stick with it. Because it's going to get easier, and the more you do the actions and the different parts of the crochet stitches, the better you're going to get, and it will fall into place and it will get easier. And don't pull anything out. I recommend with the warm heart blanket, don't pull anything out until you've done about row 4, because it will start to make more sense. Your tension will start to look more even. Your stitches will look to start more even. When I say tension, I mean crocheting tension is the size of your stitches basically. So they will start to look more even. So stick with it. And if you've got problems, if you want me to show you something again, let me know in the comments or in the chat. Okay. So that's our first chain stitch, and we'll go to 5, and then I'll show you a little way if your stitches aren't looking like this to make them look more even, or to make them look more like this. Okay, so wrap the yarn. So to do our second chain stitch, wrap the yarn around the hook. So going behind and then across the front. And then we're going to pull this yarn over through this loop. That means that this loop goes down and over the end of the hook like that. And so here's our first chain. There's the first V, and there's the second V. And then we do that again. So yarn over, so wrap the yarn around the hook going from back to front, and then pull the yarn over through the loop that's on the hook. So this loop goes down and over the end of the hook like that. Okay, so that's our first stitch here, first V. Here's our second V. And then here's the third V. And then we do that again. So wrap the yarn around the hook and then across the front, and then pull the yarn over. Here's the yarn over through this loop that's on the hook. So pull the yarn over through there. So the loop that's on the hook goes over the end of the hook. And then we'll do that once more. So yarn over, which is wrapping the yarn around the hook. So go behind and then across the front. And then this loop goes down and over the end of the hook like that. Okay, so you can see my chain is not looking like this lovely V what it was back here. It's looking more pretzelish. It's kind of exploded and flat, whereas this one looks, I can see a V and there's a knobbly bit at the back. If yours is looking like this, hold on to your knot from your slip knot and then hold on to the loop just at the bottom of the hook. And then if you pull your chain, you also have to hold on to part of this stitch here. If you pull your chain like that, excuse me, you'll see that the edges of the stitch come together and they look more like these. So I can see a bit easier. Here's my first V, that's stitch 1. Here's the second V, that's stitch 2. Here's the third V, that's stitch 3. Here's the 4th V, that's stitch 4, and here's the 5th V, that's stitch 5. So just holding the slip knot and then the end of that last. Hello, Minna. You can't block the video, darling. And then pulling it, pulls the edge stitches in so you can see the V's and you can count those. And then if you turn it over and put your V flat on the table, there's these knobbly bits sticking up, these bits of yarn sticking up. So you can always count those because it's each stitch has one of those on it too. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I show you that sideways, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can do that as well. And so these knobbly bits that when you put your V flat on the table, this is sticking up. This stitch marker is around this bit here that's sticking up that comes out of the slip knot. Just some other things to be aware of when you are doing your chain stitches. Before I said keep this knot, keep this loop back on the thickest part of your crochet hook and keep it so you can fit a finger in there. Just keep your stitches nice and big and not too tight. The other thing is when you're doing your yarn over, just watch which way you're wrapping it. So we always want to go, don't go that way. You always want to go behind and then across the front. So when you're doing a yarn over, go behind and then across the front. And then when you're holding your yarn over and pulling it through this loop, so when this loop comes over the edge, just check that your yarn, that you're holding it out here. And then this comes through and goes like that. Just like that. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for you. If not, let me know in the comments or in the chat. And if it starts to get a bit frustrating or you get a bit worried or you're not sure what's going on, 3 deep breaths always help me. And make them nice and deep. Breathe in through your nose, into your belly and feel that air rise up into your chest. And when you breathe out through your mouth, feel that air just sinking down and out. Okay, so we've done 5 stitches. So let's keep going and just keep doing the actions. Like I said before, if it doesn't look right, if it doesn't feel right, just keep doing the actions as we do them and stick with it. And I promise you it will get better. We'll fall into place. Okay, so we've done 5. So we're going to keep going to 30. So yarn over, so yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then put the yarn over through the loop that's on the hook. So this loop goes down and over the end of the hook like that. And that's number 6. And then yarn over, round the back and across the front. And then through yarn over through this loop that's on the hook. So the loop goes over the end of the hook like that. Gives us 7. Then yarn over, back and then across the front, and then this loop goes down and over the end of the hook. That's number 8. Let's see if I can keep my counting right or not. I will count my stitches at the end. And then wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes down and over the end of the hook. That's stitch number 9. And then wrap the yarn around the hook behind and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end of the hook. That's number 10. And then wrap the yarn around the back and then the front of the hook. And then this loop goes over the end. That's 11, I hope. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. That's 12. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 13. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. I think that's 14. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. Whoop. And I think that's 15, which is halfway, if my counting is correct. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. Whoop. And then this loop goes over the end. That's 16. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. 17. Keep this loop nice. Keep making sure you push this loop back up to the thickest part of your crochet hook. Make sure a finger can fit in there. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. That's 18. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. That's 19. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. That's 20. Oh, I need some more yarn. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end. 21. If you are finding this difficult, maybe doing it on a table could help too, like a nice flat surface if you're not doing that already. Oh, was that 21? I will say it is. I'll count at the end. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. And then this loop goes over the end of the hook. 22. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 23. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 24. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 25. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 26. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 27. Hold on a tick, I will be back. That's just my doorbell. And I'm back. Sorry about that, I was waiting on an important delivery. I think that was 26. So wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. 27. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front, and this loop goes over the end. That's 28. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook and then across the front. This loop goes over the end. 29. Wrap the yarn around the back of the hook, and this one goes over, then across the front, and then this loop goes over the end. Now I think that's 30, but I'm going to count. And you can see my chain isn't really looking like these. So if you just hold it and stretch it, it pulls those two ends in, the two outside parts of the stitch in, and makes them look more like these. So I'm going to do that all the way along, and we'll see how my counting has been going. And then we'll put the last stitch marker in. Okay, so let's count our V's. So here's 1, here's number 2, here's 3, here's 4, here's 5, here's 6, here's 7, here's 8, here's 9, here's 10, and I've got a bit here that's not looking like a V, so I'm just going to stretch that out too. that's 10. So here's 11, here's 12, here's 13, here's 14, here's 15, here's 16, here's 17, here's 18, here's 19, here's 20. Moving everything across. Here's 21, here's 22, here's 23, here's 24, here's 25, here's 26, here's 27, here's 28, here's 29, here's 30, and it turns out my counting wasn't so good, and we've got an extra one. So this is 30 here. So if you're like me and you've got one too many stitches, oops, sorry, here's 31. Just pull your hook out, just carefully pull your hook out, and we're just going to undo one stitch. And what that means is with this ball end, just pull it out so this loop disappears, what we just pulled the hook out of. That disappears. This becomes our new loop that's on our hook. So put that on your hook. And then this is number 30. So you can also count, this is only for the foundation chain, but you can also count the knobbly bits. So if we go back to the other end, and if you put your V facing down, you can see here's our knobbly bit sticking up. If I put that sideways so you can see it a bit better, so we can count these bits sticking up because each stitch has one of those. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oops, here's 20. Sorry about that. I went off the page. And then 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and there's 30. Now, if you've just been counting the knobbly bits, put your stitch marker around 30, the 30 knobbly bit, and if you haven't, so where to put the knobbly bit? I'm just going to put my yarn out that side. So here's the loop around the hook. That doesn't count as a stitch. So we want to go back to the V that's before. So here's the loop that's around the hook. It comes out of the V. Here's the V, the chain stitch before the loop. And then, so there's the 2 outside edges. And then on the back of that is this knobbly bit. So you can see if you open up your V, it comes out of the center of the 2 legs of the V and around the back. Here's the knobbly bit. That's where to put your stitch marker. And that'll tell us where the first stitch is of our blanket. So we know where that is and we get nice straight edges on our blanket. And that's how to do the foundation chain. And thank you for persevering with me with our technology challenges that we've had today and that I was running a bit late and having to pop out for the delivery. I'm so sorry. But we're here and we have got to the end of the foundation chain. Now, if you've had any issues, if you write them down, a few options for you. If you write them down, I'm going to ask them at the start of tomorrow's session at 12 noon. You can also go into our Chunky Crochet for Mindful Makers Facebook group and ask your questions there. I can pop in there later on and answer those. And if your photos are fabulous and even a video can be good as well. Probably photos are better if you can show what you're having problems with. But we can talk there and I can even just pop in there and do a live too as well later on this afternoon. And so you can do that there. And if you are on watching this, whether the live or the replay on the Facebook, Home New Last Facebook page, you can just type into the comments and share a photo there as well. And I'll pop into and watch that there. And Slavika says, I may have to watch that again. Yeah, so you can do that. So this one will be, so on Facebook, this will be live for you to watch. This will be ready for you to watch pretty much straight away. I'm heading off to get my COVID vaccine straight after this. So I will pop it up onto the Homely Lass website once I get back from that. And Slavika says, my V's aren't looking very good. Slavika, that's okay. Your V's are going to get better the more you crochet. Definitely. So don't stress out about that. But yeah, watch it again, keep practicing. And tomorrow we'll do the first row, which is the treble stitches. So that's fun. But yep. Pop into the Facebook group, the Chunky Crochet for Mindful Makers Facebook group. I can help you out there. You can comment on the post in the Homely Lass Facebook page as well. And remember, these videos are all, well, similar videos are also available for you for free in the Blanket School with a free membership. You've got full access to the Warm Heart Blanket online course. So you can pop in there and watch the videos there as well. So the foundation chain is in the first lesson, I'm pretty sure. So it goes welcome, the welcome lesson, and then mindful creating. This is in Blanket School with the Warm Heart Blanket online course. So there's welcome lesson, mindful creating, and then the first lesson has the foundation chain in it. So you've got that available to you as well. So happy crocheting. I will see you tomorrow at 12 noon. And Tamsin says, thank you. You're most welcome. And thank you for sharing your Zoom advice with us. And hopefully tomorrow is completely tech issue free. So thank you for joining me. And I look forward to crocheting with you tomorrow. Bye.